The rain started just as Victor stepped out of the courthouse. Not a gentle drizzle, but the kind of heavy drops that felt personal, like the sky itself was disappointed in him. He stood there for a moment watching his attorney hurry toward a waiting car, briefcase held over his head. The man didn't even look back, 54 years old, worth $3 billion on paper, and completely, utterly alone. Victor had built his empire from nothing. 28 years ago, he'd started in a garage with nothing but a laptop and an idea. The technology he developed changed how hospitals tracked patient care, saved countless lives, made healthcare more efficient. He'd been on magazine covers, given speeches at conferences, shaken hands with presidents. None of that mattered anymore. The divorce papers in his inside pocket felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. 23 years of marriage gone. Elizabeth had looked at him across that courtroom table with eyes that held nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. That was somehow worse. "You were never really there," she'd said during one of their last real conversations. "Even when you were home, you were somewhere else. Always on that phone. Always thinking about the next deal." He'd wanted to argue, to defend himself, but he couldn't. She was right. His driver pulled up to the curb. Jackson had been with him for 12 years, knew better than to ask questions. The ride back to the penthouse was silent except for the sound of rain hammering the roof of the town car. Victor stared out the window, watching the city blur past. People rushed along sidewalks, huddled under umbrellas, living their lives. When had he stopped being one of them? The penthouse felt like a museum when he walked in. Everything perfectly arranged. Nothing out of place. The designer had called it minimalist luxury. Right now it just felt empty. Cold marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that cost more than most people made in a year, all of it meaningless. Victor poured himself a drink. Scotch, 30 years old, from a crystal glass that had cost $800. It tasted like nothing. He walked to the window and looked down at the streets below. From up here, 42 floors above the city, people looked like ants. Small, insignificant. Was that how he'd been seeing the world? His phone buzzed. He almost didn't look at it, but old habits die hard. A message from his daughter, Catherine. She was 26 now, working as a teacher in Portland. He hadn't seen her in 8 months. "Mom told me about the divorce. I'm not surprised. Don't bother calling. I'm not ready to talk to you." Victor felt something crack inside his chest. He read the message again. Then again. His hand shook slightly as he set the phone down on the marble counter. Another buzz. His son this time. Daniel was 23, finishing up medical school. The message was shorter. "This is on you, Dad. You chose work over us every single time." Victor sank onto the leather couch. The expensive scotch sat forgotten on the counter. He'd missed so many moments. Catherine's high school graduation because of a board meeting in Tokyo. Daniel's college baseball games because of conference calls. Birthday dinners cut short. Vacations canceled. Promises broken. I was building something for them, he'd always told himself. Creating a legacy. Securing their future. But what good was a secure future if you weren't there to share it? His phone rang. For a brief, desperate moment, he hoped it might be Catherine or Daniel calling back. Instead, it was Richard Chen, his CFO. Victor let it go to voicemail. Richard called again immediately. Then again, Victor finally answered. "We have a problem," Richard said without preamble. "Bradley Thompson just launched a hostile takeover bid. He's offering shareholders 40% above market value." Thompson. That snake had been circling the company for years. Victor felt a familiar surge of anger, the old fighting instinct kicking in. His company. His life's work. Thompson couldn't just take it. But then the anger faded, replaced by something else, exhaustion. Deep, bone-weary exhaustion. "Victor, are you there? We need to strategize. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning." "Fine," Victor heard himself say. "Tomorrow." He ended the call and sat in silence. The penthouse suddenly felt like a prison. The walls seemed to press in on him. He thought about his father, dead now for 15 years. The old man had worked at a factory his whole life, came home tired every evening, but he'd been there. Every dinner, every school event, every Sunday morning making pancakes. "You're doing better than I ever did," his father had said once, looking around at Victor's first real office. Pride in his voice, but had he? Really? Victor stood up abruptly. He couldn't stay in this apartment another minute. Without thinking it through, he grabbed his wallet and headed for the door. No phone. No security detail, no plan. He just walked out and pressed the button for the elevator. The doorman looked surprised when Victor walked through the lobby alone. "Mr. Harrison? Do you need Jackson to bring the car around?" "No, I'm walking. Walking." "Sir, it's pouring rain." "I know." The doorman's confusion followed Victor out onto the street. The rain immediately soaked through his $1,000 suit jacket. Within seconds, his hair was plastered to his head, water running down his face. He started walking with no destination in mind. Around him, people hurried past with umbrellas trying to stay dry. Taxicabs splashed through puddles. The city moved at its relentless pace. Victor just walked, letting the rain wash over him. He passed the office building where he'd started the company. It looked different now, smaller than he remembered. A young woman stood in the doorway on the phone, laughing at something. She couldn't have been more than 25. That had been him once. Young, hungry, excited about possibilities. Where had that person gone? His feet carried him toward the park, 6 blocks from his building. He'd walked past it 1,000 times in his car, but couldn't remember the last time he'd actually been inside. The rain was starting to let up as he entered through the stone archway. The park was mostly empty. A few joggers determined to get their miles in despite the weather. An old man feeding pigeons under a covered area. And there, along the main path, a wooden bench overlooking a small pond. Victor sat down heavily. Water immediately soaked through his pants, but he didn't care. Everything was already ruined anyway. His marriage, his relationship with his kids, possibly his company. His whole life felt like it was crumbling, and for the first time in decades, he had absolutely no idea what to do about it. He put his head in his hands and just sat there, a billionaire on a park bench, completely and utterly lost. Victor didn't know how long he sat there. Time seemed to have stopped mattering. The rain had reduced to a light mist, and the clouds were starting to break apart, letting through thin streams of afternoon sunlight. But he barely noticed. His mind kept replaying moments. Catherine's face when she was 7, showing him a painting she'd made at school. He'd glanced at it for maybe 5 seconds before returning to his laptop. Daniel asking him to come outside and throw a baseball. Later, buddy. Dad's got an important call. Later never came. Elizabeth, in the early years, still trying. Can we just have one dinner? Just us, no phones. And him, always promising, always breaking that promise. He'd thought he was building something important. Something that would make them proud. But all he'd really built was distance. "Excuse me, mister?" The voice was small, young. Victor looked up, startled. A little girl stood about 5 feet away, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She wore a pink raincoat that was slightly too big for her. The sleeves rolled up at the wrists. Her dark hair was pulled into 2 ponytails, and she held a slightly deflated balloon in one hand. "Are you okay?" she asked. Victor quickly wiped his face, trying to compose himself. He realized his cheeks were wet, and it wasn't just from the rain. "I'm fine," he managed. "Thank you for asking." The girl tilted her head, studying him with the kind of direct honesty only children possess. "You don't look fine. You look really sad." Something about her simple observation broke through Victor's carefully constructed walls. He found himself unable to give his usual polite dismissal. "I suppose I'm a bit sad today." "Why?" Victor almost smiled despite everything. The straightforward question was so refreshing compared to the careful political conversations he was used to. "Grown-up problems," he said. "Nothing for you to worry about." The girl nodded seriously as if this made perfect sense. Then she took a step closer. "My name's Lily. I'm 7 3/4. That's my grandma over there." She pointed toward the covered area where an elderly woman sat on another bench reading a book. "It's nice to meet you." "Lily, I'm Victor." "Victor," she repeated, testing the name. "That's a strong name. It's like a king or something." "I don't feel very strong right now." Lily moved closer and sat down on the bench beside him, her small legs dangling several inches above the ground. She set her balloon down carefully between them. "My daddy's not here either," she said quietly. "He's in the army, far away. We can't see him for a long time." Victor looked at this little girl sharing her own sadness so openly. That must be very hard. "Yeah, Mommy cries sometimes when she thinks I'm asleep. And Grandma Rose moved in with us because Mommy has to work a lot to pay for things." She swung her legs back and forth. "But Grandma says it's okay to be sad sometimes. She says feelings are like weather. They come and they go." "Your grandmother sounds wise." "She is. She knows lots of stuff. Lily looked up at him with dark, thoughtful eyes. Do you have kids? The question hit Victor like a punch to the chest. Yes, two, a daughter and a son. Are they here? No, they're far away, like your dad. Do you miss them? Victor's throat tightened. Yes, very much, Lily nodded knowingly. Missing people is the worst kind of sad. It's different from being mad or scared. It sits right here. She put her small hand on her chest, and sometimes it gets really heavy. Victor stared at this child, amazed by her emotional intelligence. That's exactly what it feels like. Grandma taught me something for when I miss Daddy really bad. Lily turned to face him more directly. She says when you miss someone, it means you love them. And love is good, even when it hurts. So the hurt is just love with nowhere to go. Love with nowhere to go, Victor repeated softly. The simple phrase resonated deep within him. That's exactly what he felt. All this love he'd never properly expressed, never properly shared, just sitting inside him with nowhere to go. Lily studied his face again, her expression serious beyond her years. Then she said something that changed everything. I think you need a hug. Victor blinked. What? A hug? You need one, I can tell. She stood up on the bench so she was closer to his height. Grandma says hugs are medicine for sad hearts, and your heart looks really sad. Before Victor could respond, before he could say it wasn't necessary or proper or put up any of his usual barriers, Lily wrapped her small arms around his neck. It was the simplest gesture. A child's embrace, warm and uncomplicated. No agenda, no judgment, just pure human kindness from someone who saw another person in pain and wanted to help. And Victor broke. Years of holding everything together, of being strong and in control, of pushing down every feeling that might make him appear weak, all of it crumbled. He put his arms around this little girl he'd just met and cried. Really cried for the first time in decades. Great. Shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside him. Lily just held on, patting his back gently the way someone had probably comforted her when she was sad. It's okay, she said softly. Crying is okay. Grandma says it's how our hearts take a bath. Victor couldn't speak. He could only cry, releasing years of pain and regret and loneliness. The small child who had her own sadness to carry had somehow sensed his need and responded with pure compassion. Is everything all right here? Victor looked up to see an elderly woman approaching, concern on her face. She was perhaps 70, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. This had to be Grandma Rose. Grandma, Lily called out, still holding on to Victor. This is Victor. He was really sad, so I gave him a hug. That's okay, right? The grandmother's expression softened as she took in the scene. She seemed to understand immediately what was happening. That's very kind of you, sweetheart. But we should let the gentleman have his space. No, it's okay, Victor said quickly, his voice rough from crying. She's been very kind, thank you. Lily finally let go and climbed down from the bench. See? He needed it. Rose smiled gently at her granddaughter, then looked at Victor with sympathy. I apologize if she intruded. She has a way of finding people who need a friend. She didn't intrude, Victor said, wiping his face with his sleeve. She saved me, I think. Bad day? Victor let out a shaky laugh. Bad year. Bad decade, maybe. Rose nodded, understanding in her eyes. Those happen. Mind if we sit with you for a moment? Lily's been playing for the past hour and these old bones need a rest. Victor found himself nodding. He didn't want to be alone anymore. Please. Rose settled onto the bench beside him while Lily retrieved her balloon and sat on her grandmother's other side, swinging her legs contentedly. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Three people who moments ago were strangers, now connected by something indefinable. My grandson is deployed overseas, Rose said quietly. Lily's father. It's been 14 months. Another 6 to go if all goes well. That must be incredibly difficult. It is. His wife, Amy. She's working 2 jobs to keep their apartment. I help when I can, but my pension only stretches so far. Rose smiled sadly. Life isn't always what we planned, is it?
No, Victor agreed.
It isn't. Lily tugged on her grandmother's sleeve. Can we tell him about the letters? The letters? Victor asked. Rose's expression brightened slightly. Every Sunday we write letters to Lily's father. We tell him about our week, draw pictures, send photos. He writes back when he can. It helps having that connection. Victor thought about his own children. When was the last time he'd really communicated with them? Not just texts about logistics or bank transfers, but real communication. Connection, he said softly. I think I forgot about that. It's easy to forget, Rose said. Life gets busy. We get caught up in everything we think we need to do, and we forget about what really matters. Lily looked up at Victor. Do you feel a little better now? Victor looked at this small girl with her too big raincoat and her gentle heart. Then at her grandmother, who carried her own burdens with such grace. Yes, he said honestly, I do. And surprisingly, it was true. They sat together as the sun finally broke through the clouds completely, warming the damp bench. Victor found himself in no hurry to leave. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the next meeting, the next deal, the next thing demanding his attention. You know what's funny? Rose said, watching Lily chase after a squirrel that had ventured close. When you're young, you think you have all the time in the world. Then suddenly you're my age wondering where it all went. Victor nodded. I spent so much time building my company I forgot to build relationships with the people who mattered. What kind of company? Technology. Healthcare systems. We help hospitals manage patient information, coordinate care, that sort of thing. He paused. At least that's what I used to tell myself it was about. Helping people. But somewhere along the way it just became about the numbers. The growth. The next acquisition. Rose was quiet for a moment. Did it work? Did all that focus make you successful? By most measures, yes. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But today I finalized my divorce. My kids won't talk to me, and someone's trying to take my company. Victor laughed bitterly, so I'm not sure what success even means anymore. Grandma, look! Lily came running back holding an acorn. The squirrel dropped this for me. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Why don't you see if you can find more? We can take them home and plant them. Lily's face lit up, and they'll grow into giant trees. Maybe, if we take good care of them. As Lily scampered off on her new mission, Rose turned back to Victor. She's the reason I get up every morning. Her and Amy, my daughter-in-law, when my grandson deployed, they needed help. I didn't hesitate. That must be difficult, though. Starting over at your age, Rose smiled. I'm 72. I worked as a school librarian for 40 years. My husband passed 5 years ago. I thought I'd spend my retirement reading books and traveling a little. Instead, I'm helping raise a second generation. She paused. But you know what? I wouldn't change it. This time with Lily, these moments, they matter more than any cruise or quiet afternoon. Victor felt something stir inside him. I wish I'd understood that earlier. It's not too late. My daughter won't even talk to me. My son says everything is my fault. And they're right. So you made mistakes. We all do. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? Before Victor could answer, Lily returned with a handful of acorns and leaves. Look how many I found. Can we really plant these, Grandma? We can try. But remember, trees need time and attention to grow. You can't just plant them and forget about them. I know. You have to water them and make sure they get sunshine and talk to them so they're not lonely. Rose met Victor's eyes over Lily's head, and he understood the lesson wasn't just for the child. Lily, Rose said gently, why don't you show Victor the picture you drew? Oh yeah. Lily reached into her raincoat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, slightly damp. She handed it to Victor carefully. I made this in school yesterday. Victor unfolded the paper. It was a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands, a small one in the middle, a taller one with long hair on one side, and another tall one with what looked like a uniform on the other side. Above them was a big yellow sun and the words, Our Family, in uneven letters. That's me and Mommy and Daddy, Lily explained, pointing to each figure. Even though Daddy's far away, Grandma says we're still holding hands in our hearts. Victor stared at the simple drawing, feeling his throat tighten again. It's beautiful, Lily. You can keep it if you want. Maybe it'll help you not be so sad. Lily, that's sweet, but this is yours, Victor started to say. I can make another one. I like drawing. She pushed the paper back toward him. Besides, you need it more than me. Victor carefully refolded the picture and put it in his jacket pocket. Thank you. I'll treasure it. Rose checked her watch and sighed. We should probably head home soon. Amy will be finishing her shift at the diner and I need to start dinner. The diner? Victor asked. She works there for lunch, then does an evening shift at the grocery store. Between that and my pension we manage. Rose's voice was matter of fact, but Victor could hear the underlying worry. That's 2 jobs? 2.5, really. She picks up weekend shifts when she can. Rose stood up slowly, her knees creaking. The rent went up again last month. Landlord says he's selling the building, and the new owners want to renovate, which means we'll probably have to move. Where will you go? Rose's expression darkened slightly. That's the problem. Everything in the city is so expensive now. We're looking at places farther out, but then Amy's commute gets longer. And I worry about Lily changing schools. She finally made some good friends. Lily was collecting her acorns into a small pile, humming to herself, oblivious to the adult concerns swirling around her. How much time do you have? Victor asked. End of next month, unless we can come up with first month, last month security deposit, and moving costs for a new place. Which we can't. Rose shook her head. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear about our problems. You have enough of your own. But Victor was thinking, really thinking, in a way he hadn't in a long time. Not about mergers or market shares or quarterly earnings, but about real people with real problems. About a little girl who might have to leave her school and friends. About a mother working herself to exhaustion. About a grandmother who gave up her retirement to help family. What if I could help? He heard himself say. Rose looked at him carefully. That's kind of you, but we're not looking for charity. It wouldn't be charity. Victor struggled to find the words. Your granddaughter showed me more kindness in 10 minutes than I've experienced in years. She didn't have to. She saw someone hurting and helped. That's rare. That's special. She is special, Rose agreed softly. But we'll figure something out. We always do. Lily came back over, her hands full of treasures from the park. Are we going home now? Yes, sweetheart. Say goodbye to Victor. Bye, Victor, Lily said brightly. Then more seriously, will you be okay? Victor looked at this little girl with her pure heart and honest concern. I think so. Because of you. Remember, feelings are like weather. Tomorrow might be sunny. She smiled, showing a gap where a tooth had fallen out. I'll remember. Rose began gathering their things. Victor stood up too, suddenly not wanting them to leave. In the short time they'd spent together, something had shifted inside him. These strangers had reminded him of something essential he'd lost along the way. Wait, he said. Please, I'd like to help. Not because I feel sorry for you, but because... He paused, trying to articulate the feeling. Because today, when I had lost everything that mattered, your granddaughter reminded me what being human actually means. Let me do something, please. Rose studied him for a long moment. Why would you do that? You don't know it. Maybe that's exactly why I should. Because it's the right thing to do. Because I have the ability to help, and I've spent too many years not using that ability in ways that matter. I don't know, Rose said hesitantly. At least give me your phone number. Let me think about how I might be able to help. No strings attached. No expectations. Just one person trying to do something good. Rose looked down at Lily, who was watching the exchange with curious eyes. Finally, she nodded. All right, but only if you're sure. Victor pulled out his phone, the one he'd almost left at home. For once he was grateful he had it. Rose recited her number and he saved it in his contacts. I'll call you tomorrow, he promised. We'll figure something out. As Rose and Lily walked away, the little girl turned back and waved enthusiastically. Victor waved back, watching until they disappeared around a bend in the path. Then he sat back down on the bench and pulled out the folded drawing from his pocket. 3 stick figures holding hands. A family connected even when separated by distance. For the first time in months, maybe years, Victor felt something stirring inside him. Not ambition or competitive drive, but something simpler and more profound. Purpose. Real purpose. He took out his phone and stared at it for a long moment. Then he made a decision. He opened his messages and typed carefully. Catherine, Daniel, I know you don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. But I need you to know something. Today someone showed me who I've become and I don't like it. I can't change the past, but I want to try to do better. I love you both. I always have. I just forgot how to show it. Dad! He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he scrolled to Richard's name and typed another message. About the takeover. Let's talk tomorrow. But not about fighting it. About something else. Something more important. Victor stood up from the bench and looked around the park. The same place, the same trees, the same pond. But everything felt different now. He felt different. He started walking back toward his building, but this time he wasn't running from his feelings. He was walking toward something. He didn't know exactly what yet, but for the first time in a very long time he wanted to find out. Victor barely slept that night. He kept thinking about Lily's drawing, which now sat on his nightstand instead of in his pocket. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her small face looking up at him with such genuine concern. A 7-year-old child who had her own worries, her own sadness, but still took the time to care about a stranger. At 6 in the morning, he got up and made coffee. Real coffee, from the expensive machine in his kitchen that he'd used maybe 3 times. Usually Jackson picked up his morning coffee on the way. But Victor wanted to do something himself today. Something normal. His phone buzzed. His heart jumped, hoping for a response from his kids. Instead, it was Richard again, with a long message about the hostile takeover, board member positions, defensive strategies. Victor read it twice, then set the phone down without responding. There would be time for that later. Right now, he had something more important to do. At 9 o'clock, he called Rose. She answered on the 3rd ring, slightly breathless. Hello? Rose, it's Victor. From the park yesterday. Oh, Victor. I wasn't sure if you'd actually call. I always keep my promises, he said, then paused, realizing how hollow that sounded given his history with his own family. Or at least I'm going to start keeping them. Can we meet? I'd like to discuss how I can help with your situation. There was a long silence. Victor, I've been thinking about this. We appreciate the kindness, but we can't accept money from a stranger. It wouldn't be right. What if I'm not offering money? Victor said, an idea already forming. What if I'm offering something else? They agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near her apartment. When Victor arrived, he found Rose already there, sitting at a corner table. She looked tired in the morning light, the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying too much for too long. Thank you for coming, Victor said, sitting down across from her. I almost didn't, Rose admitted. I spent half the night wondering if this was a good idea. You seem like a nice man, but we don't really know you. You're right to be cautious, so let me tell you about myself. And Victor did something he rarely did anymore. He talked honestly. About his company, yes, but also about his failures, his divorce, his estranged children, the emptiness that had consumed him until yesterday. That little girl, he said quietly. She reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That kindness matters. That connection matters. That we're supposed to help each other. Rose listened without interrupting. When he finished, she nodded slowly. What exactly are you proposing? I own property, lots of it, including several apartment buildings in this area that I bought as investments years ago and basically forgot about. I have management companies that handle everything. I couldn't even tell you how many units are occupied. He leaned forward. Let me look into it. Maybe there's an opening in one of my buildings. You could move there and we'd work out a rent you can actually afford. That's still charity, Rose said, but her voice was softer now. Is it? Or is it just a landlord choosing to be reasonable instead of greedy? Besides, you'd be doing me a favor. I need to start making decisions that matter, that help real people, not just shareholders. Rose studied his face for a long moment. Why us? Why Lily? Because she saw me. Really saw me. When I was invisible to everyone else, including myself. She noticed I was hurting and she did something about it. No hesitation. No calculation. Just pure human kindness. Victor felt his voice catch. I want to be more like her. A small smile crossed Rose's face. She does have a gift for finding people who need help. Always has, even as a toddler. She once tried to give her lunch to a homeless man when she was 3. She gets it from somewhere, Victor said meaningfully. Before Rose could respond, the coffee shop door opened and a young woman rushed in, still wearing a work uniform from the diner. She was maybe 30, with tired eyes and Lily's same dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Mom, I'm so sorry I'm late. I couldn't find parking and then... She stopped when she saw Victor. Oh, I didn't realize you had company. Amy, this is Victor. From the park yesterday. The man Lily gave a hug to. Recognition dawned on Amy's face. Oh, Lily wouldn't stop talking about you last night. She told me all about the sad man who needed a hug and how she made him feel better. She smiled. That's my daughter. Always trying to fix the world. She did fix something, Victor said. More than she knows. Rose explained the situation to Amy, who listened with increasing surprise. When her mother finished, Amy shook her head slowly. This is incredibly generous, but I don't understand. Why would you do this for people you just met? Because I can, Victor said simply. Because I have resources I've been hoarding like they're going to make me happy. And they don't. Because your daughter reminded me that the only thing that actually matters is how we treat each other. Amy's eyes filled with tears. Do you have any idea what it's been like? Working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, watching Mom exhaust herself helping us, worrying every day about where we'll go when we have to leave our apartment? Her voice broke. I feel like I'm failing everyone. You're not failing anyone, Victor said firmly. You're doing the best you can in a system that's rigged against people like you. A system that people like me built and benefit from. He paused. Let me try to balance the scales a little bit. They talked for another hour. Victor learned more about their lives. About Amy's husband, deployed in the Middle East with 6 months left on his tour. About Lily's struggles with reading that she was working hard to overcome. About Rose's arthritis that made her hands ache by the end of the day. But she never complained because there was too much to do. As they talked, Victor made calls. To his property manager, who seemed shocked to hear directly from him. To his lawyer, who was even more shocked when Victor started asking about tenant rights and rent control. By the time they finished their coffee, Victor had found a 2-bedroom apartment in one of his buildings just 3 blocks from Lily's current school. It's available immediately, he told them. And before you ask about rent, here's what I'm thinking. What you're paying now, that's what you'll pay. No increase. A 3-year lease with that rate locked in. Amy put her face in her hands. Her shoulders shook. Rose put an arm around her daughter, her own eyes wet. Why? Amy whispered. Why are you doing this? Victor thought about that question. About sitting on that bench yesterday, completely lost. About a small hand patting his back while a child's voice said, crying is okay. About a simple crayon drawing of a family holding hands. Because yesterday I had everything and felt like I had nothing. Your daughter, who has every reason to be focused on her own problems, stopped and saw my pain. She didn't judge me or ignore me. She just helped, he smiled. Besides, I spent 28 years building a company. Maybe it's time I spent some time building something else. What? Rose asked. Connections, relationships, a life that actually means something. His phone buzzed. He almost ignored it, but something made him look. A text from Catherine. I don't know if I'm ready to forgive you yet, but I appreciate you saying that. Can we talk? Maybe this weekend? Victor felt something bloom in his chest. Hope. Real, fragile, terrifying hope. He showed the message to Rose and Amy. My daughter. She's willing to talk to me. That's wonderful, Rose said warmly. It's a start, Victor agreed. After yesterday, I'm learning to appreciate starts. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just need to take the first step. They made plans for Rose and Amy to see the apartment that afternoon. As they stood to leave, Amy hugged him tightly. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to us. But Victor was beginning to understand what it meant to him. For years, he'd measured success in dollars and market share. He'd built an empire but lost himself in the process. Now, in this small coffee shop helping one family find a stable home, he felt more successful than he had in decades. Can I ask you something? Amy said as they walked to the door. What changed? Yesterday you were a stranger on a bench. Today you're changing our lives. What happened? Victor thought about that. I remembered something I'd forgotten. That we're all connected, that my success means nothing if I'm not using it to help others. That a 7-year-old girl understood something I'd spent 54 years forgetting. What's that? That everybody needs a hug sometimes, and that giving one can save you just as much as receiving it. As Victor watched them walk away, planning their new beginning, he felt his phone buzz again. Another text from Catherine. Just 3 words, I love you too, Dad. Victor stood on the sidewalk and cried for the 2nd time in 2 days, but this time they were different tears. Not tears of loss and regret, but tears of gratitude. Tears of hope. Tears of a man who was finally, slowly finding his way back home. He had work to do. A company to figure out, a hostile takeover to address. But for the first time, those things felt manageable. Because now he had something more important. He had purpose. He had connection. He had a chance to be better. And it all started with a little girl in a too-big raincoat who saw a stranger's pain and offered the simplest, most powerful medicine in the world, a hug. 6 months later, Victor stood in front of a building he'd driven past 100 times but never really seen. It was in the same neighborhood where Rose and Amy lived, a space that had been a closed-down community center for years. Today it was about to open again. The renovation had taken 4 months. Not just cosmetic changes, but real improvements. New floors, updated wiring, a kitchen where people could learn to cook or get a hot meal, a library with computers, meeting rooms, a play area for kids, space for job training workshops and resume help and whatever else the community needed. Victor had barely recognized himself these past months. The hostile takeover of his company? He'd let it happen, not out of defeat but out of choice. He'd negotiated a deal that kept his employees protected, sold his majority stake for less than it was worth, and walked away with enough to fund 10 projects like this one. Richard had nearly had a heart attack. The board thought he'd lost his mind. His lawyers kept asking if he was sure. He'd never been more sure of anything in his life. Dad? Victor turned to see Catherine walking toward him, Daniel beside her. His daughter was wearing a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back the way Elizabeth used to wear hers. His son had grown a beard since Victor had last seen him, making him look older, more like a doctor. They'd been talking regularly for the past few months. Careful conversations at first, full of old hurts and careful words, then longer calls, then visits. Last month, Catherine had invited him to Portland, and they'd spent a whole weekend together. Just talking. Really talking, maybe for the first time ever? You made it, Victor said, trying to keep his voice steady. Of course we made it, Catherine said. You invited us like 5 times. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. Besides, we wanted to see what you've been working on. Daniel looked up at the building. Mom said you've gone completely off the rails. Sold the company, started doing charity work, actually answer your phone now. Is that what she said? Victor asked carefully. He and Elizabeth were cordial now, nothing more. The divorce was final, but at least they could talk without anger. She said it like it was a bad thing, Daniel continued. But I told her maybe you just finally figured some stuff out. Victor felt his throat tighten. I'm trying. I know I can't make up for the years I missed, but I'm trying. Catherine stepped forward and hugged him. Quick but real. We know, Dad, we can see it. The gesture, so simple, reminded him of that day in the park. How a child's hug had cracked something open inside him that had been closed for too long. Come on, he said. Let me show you around before everyone else gets here. They walked through the building together. Victor pointed out the different spaces, explained his vision. A place where people could get help finding jobs, where kids could do homework after school, where families could access resources they needed. There's a woman who's going to run the employment services, Victor explained. She used to be homeless. Pulled herself up, got her degree. She understands what people are going through. This is really impressive, Dad, Daniel said quietly. In the main room, volunteers were setting up chairs for the opening ceremony. Victor recognized many of them. Tenants from his buildings who he'd actually gotten to know. People from the neighborhood. Rose had recruited half of them, Victor. He turned to see Lily running toward him, wearing a yellow dress and a huge smile. She'd lost another tooth since he'd last seen her, and she'd grown at least an inch. Behind her, Amy and Rose walked more slowly, both smiling. Lily crashed into him with the enthusiasm only a 7-year-old could manage. You did it. You really built the center. We built it, Victor corrected, hugging her back. This was a community effort. But you paid for it, Lily said matter-of-factly. Money's easy. The hard part is knowing what to do with it. Rose reached them, slightly out of breath. Lily, gentle. Not everyone wants to be tackled. It's fine, Victor laughed. I'll take all the hugs I can get these days. Amy smiled at Catherine and Daniel. You must be Victor's kids. He talks about you constantly, does he? Catherine asked, looking at her father with surprise. Every time we see him, Rose confirmed. How proud he is of you both. How much he misses you. Victor felt his face warm. He hadn't realized how much he'd been talking about them. But then he hadn't realized a lot of things until 6 months ago. Are you the little girl who hugged my dad? Daniel asked Lily. Lily nodded seriously. He was really sad. He needed it. Yes, Daniel said softly, looking at his father. He did. People started arriving. Neighbors, local business owners, the mayor who'd heard about the project and wanted to be there. Victor had learned their names, their stories. He'd spent the last tour. When it was time for the ceremony, Victor stood at a small podium. Public speaking had always been easy for him. He'd given speeches to thousands, talked to investors, presented at conferences, but looking out at these faces, People he now knew, people who mattered. He felt more nervous than he ever had in a boardroom. 6 months ago, he began. I thought I had everything. A successful company, money, reputation. But I was sitting on a park bench completely alone and I realized I had nothing that mattered. He found Lily in the crowd, sitting between her mother and grandmother. She waved at him. Then a little girl came up to me. She saw I was sad and she gave me a hug. She didn't know who I was. She didn't want anything from me. She just saw another person in pain and wanted to help. Victor paused. That moment changed my life. He talked about what he'd learned. That real wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. That success means nothing if you're alone. That the most important thing any of us can do is see each other, really see each other, and help when we can. This center is about connection. Victor continued. It's about building a community where people help each other. Where a kid struggling with homework can get help. Where someone looking for work can find support. Where people don't have to face their problems alone. After the ceremony, people toured the building. Victor watched Catherine helping set up books in the library. Daniel was talking to some teenagers about medical careers. His kids helping, being part of something. Rose found him in a quiet corner. You did good work here. I had good teachers, Victor said, nodding toward where Lily was showing other kids the play area. She asks about you, you know. Wants to know if you're still sad. Tell her I'm not. Not anymore. Victor smiled. Or at least when I am sad, I remember what she taught me. That feelings come and go like weather. And that asking for help is okay. What about your company? Any regrets? Victor thought about that. No. I built something that mattered and someone else can run it now. I'd rather build this. Build relationships. Make sure my kids know I love them. Help people like you and Amy. That feels more important than any quarterly earnings report. Amy joined them, Lily's hand in hers. We got a letter yesterday. From Kevin, he's coming home next month. Rose's face lit up. Next month? 3 weeks early. The deployment's being cut short. Amy's eyes were wet. He's coming home. Lily was bouncing with excitement. Daddy's coming home. And we have the new apartment and everything's ready for him. Victor felt his own eyes sting. That's wonderful news. We couldn't have been ready without you, Amy said. The stable housing, not having to worry about moving. Mom being able to rest more. You gave us the stability to get through this. You would have made it anyway, Victor said. You're stronger than you think. Maybe, but it would have been a lot harder. Amy squeezed his hand. Thank you. As the afternoon went on, Victor found himself surrounded by people. Real conversations. Real connections. Daniel was laughing with some local kids. Catherine was exchanging numbers with one of the volunteers talking about education programs. Later, as the sun began to set, Victor stood outside the center watching people leave. Many of them waved goodbye, called out thanks, made plans to come back. Lily ran up one last time before leaving. Victor, yes? Are you happy now? Victor knelt down to her level. Yes, Lily, I am. Because of you. Because of a hug. Because you reminded me what matters. You showed me how to be kind, how to see people. He touched his chest. You helped my heart take a bath just like your grandmother said. Lily giggled at that. Then she hugged him again, quick and fierce. Good. Everyone should be happy. As she ran back to her family, Catherine came to stand beside Victor. They watched Lily skip away, holding hands with Rose and Amy. She's something special, Catherine said. She is. She saw me when I couldn't see myself. Catherine was quiet for a moment. I'm proud of you, Dad, for changing. For trying. I know it's not easy. Hardest thing I've ever done, Victor admitted. But the most important. Yeah. Catherine leaned her head on his shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was small. I missed you. The real you. I'm glad you came back. Victor put his arm around his daughter. Around them, the neighborhood was settling into evening. Lights coming on in windows. Families gathering for dinner. Life ordinary and beautiful. I'm glad I came back too, he said softly. He thought about that day 6 months ago. How lost he'd been. How empty. How he'd thought his life was over. A little girl had shown him it was just beginning. Sometimes the smallest gesture changes everything. Sometimes kindness from a stranger reminds you who you're supposed to be. Sometimes all it takes is someone seeing your pain and saying, simply and honestly, I think you need a hug. And sometimes, that's exactly what saves you. Victor looked at his daughter beside him. At the community center they'd opened together. At the life he was building now. A life that mattered. A life filled with real connection. He finally understood what his father had meant all those years ago. Success isn't about what you build or how much you earn. It's about the people you love and the lives you touch. It's about being present, being human, being kind. And it all starts with seeing each other, really seeing each other, the way a 7-year-old girl in a too big raincoat had seen him.